For centuries, some of India's greatest cities have been built along its banks. Varanasi, the oldest one of them. It's only when you come to the ancient city of Varanasi that you realize how this mighty river that's so central to the Hindu faith, that sustains the lives and beliefs of nearly 500 million people, is as polluted as it is. The Ganges is more than a river to Indians. It is sacred to Hindus who pray and worship along its banks and cremate their dead in it. From the time it flows out of the icy heights of the Himalayas until it gets here, its crystal clear waters give way to a fetid, muddy flow, contaminated by the millions who live along its banks. 5 generations of Sanjay Tripathi's family have lived along the Ganges in Varanasi, living witnesses to its gradual degradation.
There's an old saying here that the Ganges belongs to everyone. You are free to do what you want, throw what you want, cremate dead bodies, bathe, wash, and you will achieve salvation. But we are being irresponsible. We do not have the right to pollute the Ganges this way.
3 years ago, the Indian government pledged $3 billion to clean up the Ganges. But much of the money remains unspent, and the focus in any case is on treating sewage and industrial effluents. So the only people trying to prevent plastic waste being dumped into the river are these scrap pickers.
Every day we pick up about 10 to 20 kilos of plastic. We have to sift through the rubbish and segregate the plastic.
It is estimated that every year 1.2 billion pounds of plastic waste is dumped into the Ganges, much of it carried into the Bay of Bengal, where the river eventually empties out. Sanjay Majumdar, BBC News, Varanasi.
Now, when that plastic waste flows from the rivers into the oceans, it gradually breaks down into ever smaller fragments, what are called microplastics, too small to see with the naked eye. And researchers are finding that these plastic particles are everywhere, even in creatures living in the deepest corners of the sea. A startling creature in the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of the ocean. A realm so alien it feels utterly unlike anything we're familiar with.
I think it's a sponge.
I think you guys can go.
No, it is trash.
Until the cameras pick up sites like this. And we now know it's the pollution you can't see that might be more damaging. Carrier bags and other plastic waste break up into millions of tiny fragments. And research a few years ago revealed how these plastic particles can be ingested, even by the smallest marine creatures. Now, a research expedition in the Pacific has made another shocking discovery, when nets were sent all the way down to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Back in their lab at Newcastle University, the scientists had an unwelcome surprise. Every creature they'd brought up from the deep had swallowed some plastic waste. Being remote is no defence.
I think it's quite worrying, and it was quite a surprise. I mean, I think when we went into this, we figured we'd probably see something, find something of interest. We didn't expect to find so much of it. And there are areas, for example, the bottom of the Mariana Trench, every single amphipod we looked at had at least one fibre in its stomach.
Professor Alan Jemison there on the scourge of plastic waste. Now, there are lots of ideas for tackling the crisis, and there's also growing political attention as well, with international conferences due to discuss action during the course of this year. But ultimately, a lot of this comes down to us, and whether we realise that when we throw plastic away, it doesn't just vanish. It has to end up somewhere.
Britain is leaving the European Union. Talks are underway, but what will Brexit mean for the rest of the world?
In Asia, companies that have invested in the UK are wondering whether they have to rethink their strategy and move their money and their factories elsewhere.
Who will benefit? Europe's governments are lobbying hard to win their business.
African exporters also sense an opportunity as the UK tours the world looking for new trading partners.
President Trump has already said he'd strike a quick deal with Britain.
but hasn't said what he wants in return.
India sees more advantage in taking its time. A good agreement on trade, it says, is better than a rushed one. But does it risk on missing out?
Brexit will bring change around the world, but here in the UK, the debate goes on. Will leaving the EU prove a smart business move?
Business on the BBC. Make the connection.
Hello, I'm Yelda Hakim, coming to you live from the south of Mosul.
I'm Yelda Hakim in Cambodia.
Just a few weeks ago, ISIS was beheading people in these streets.
To fully understand what's going on in the world,
You have to get out in the field and hear people's stories.
I like the way you dance.
back in the Impact studio, I share those stories with my global audience.
You, Yelda.
I'm Yelda Hakim. Join me on my show Impact on BBC World News.
They use their hands. One of these. Actors. Light. Maybe one of these. Script or no script. And their imagination. Cinema now has the ability to capture anything we can imagine. Get an exclusive look behind the scenes as we watch 6 internationally acclaimed award-winning directors turn dreams into reality. The Art of Directing continues on BBC World News.
Now on BBC World News, the shocking truth behind an anti-epileptic drug which has allegedly harmed thousands of children. Sarah Welsh uncovers new medical evidence suggesting that birth defects caused by the drug could be passed down through generations of the same family, in a special edition of Inside Out.
Deformed, disabled, damaged. Thousands of babies around the world genetically harmed in the womb by one drug.
She can't go to the toilet, she can't walk, she can't talk.
We bring to light the records that show the British government knew the drug causes birth defects, yet chose to hide the truth from expectant mothers. Now, new scientific research warns sodium valproate's toxic legacy could be eternal, harming generation after generation.
It's because I took that medication. My grandkids have been affected by it. So many people's lives have been affected and ruined.
Well, this is all her fit medicine. This one here, I have to give her 3 times a day. This one twice a day, and this one twice a day.
Every morning, first thing, Karen carefully measures out the exact amount of medicine needed to keep her daughter alive, to save her from falling into a fatal coma.
Bridget got hiccups. You're going to swallow it. I know, it's horrible. You got to swallow it, though.
Bridget is 19. She still plays with some of the toys she had as a baby.
This is the photo album I done for Bridget when we came home. Pictures of her in a cart with her toys around because she could only just lay there still with her head to the side.
Bridget was born with a catastrophic array of medical ailments, including brain damage and spina bifida. She's paralysed from the waist down. Even her bowels aren't fully formed.
She can't go to the toilet, she can't walk, she can't talk. She can't think for herself. I do all Bridget's overall care. I think for Bridget, I talk for Bridget, I walk for Bridget, I live for Bridget.
When Karen was pregnant with Bridget, she was prescribed a high dosage of the drug sodium valproate. She has epilepsy, and the pills were meant to control the seizures. But the powerful chemicals that protected her health damaged her daughter's.
I pop these tablets into my system, and what happens? 6 months down the line, I'm under antenatal treatment, and then they turn around and look at me, look at the screen, and turn around and say to me, what do you want to do? You want to have an abortion, you're carrying a spina bifida baby.
Like Bridget, around 20,000 children in the UK and thousands of others around the world are believed to have fetal valproate syndrome after being exposed to the powerful drug valproic acid in the womb. Some of the children are so severely harmed they'll never develop beyond the mental capabilities of a toddler. Others may appear fine but will struggle with cognitive and physical disabilities throughout their lives.
We know from our research that children who are exposed to sodium valproate can be affected physically, they can be affected mentally, and they can be affected psychologically.
These children have an increased risk of clefting, cleft palate, and these children are more prone to spina bifida or neural tube defect. We also know that there's an increased risk of congenital heart disease and occasionally an increased risk of kidney abnormalities.
I've come to Paris to meet the head of a charity that helps families struggling with fetal valproate syndrome. Maureen Martin's children also suffer from the condition.
This picture is terrible. It's a proof that I take valproate during pregnancy. Salome was a very strange face. She had the eyes very special and the nose very plate. You see, no lips, and the here the menton very small. It's not normal.
Both of Maureen's children have abnormal facial features. They also suffer from neurological problems. But her son is most seriously harmed, with more apparent disabilities.
My son have malformation, problem of hypospadias, problem of hand, he have autism, problem of language, he have dyspraxia, he can write, for example, so a lot of problems.
Maureen has been prescribed sodium valproate since childhood to control her epilepsy. But she says she was never warned that taking the drug whilst pregnant could damage her children. She only discovered the link by looking online.
Every day I take my drug, valproate, during my pregnancy. So I put in Google, pregnancy, valproate, danger. And I find a website in Paris of an hospital, who tell me that it was the more dangerous drugs if you take during pregnancy. And he talked about autism, he talked about malformation. So I was shocked because why the doctor don't tell me that it was very dangerous for the pregnancy.
In a statement, Sanofi, the company that produces the drug, said,
Sanofi has always demonstrated full transparency to health authorities and initiated the updating of medical information for doctors and patients. Sanofi has systematically reminded patients via the information document that they should consult their prescribing physician in case of pregnancy or desire for pregnancy, so that their physician can act accordingly.
Since the anti-epilepsy drug was launched in the 1960s under various brand names, it's estimated that tens of thousands of women around the world have taken it during their pregnancies, unaware of the dangers. Karen is one of them.
I didn't think my child was going to be like how she is today. If I had known when Bridgie was inside me, if I had known now what I knew back then, I wouldn't have had my child.
Emma and Janet, based in northwest England, also took sodium valproate during their pregnancies. They say they weren't aware of any warnings and were given no indication of the danger by their doctors.
He didn't even tell me really to an effect that I had epilepsy to start with. When I got my first prescription, there was no warnings in the boxes at that point. I mean, we're talking 83, 84. So there was nothing for me at all.
My husband and I questioned the midwives, questioned neurologists, and to just be told, take this medicine, it's the best to control your seizures. That's great to control the seizures, but the baby.
After their children were born with disabilities, in 2013, Janet and Emma set up a charity that aims to ensure warnings are prominently displayed on the packaging of all sodium valproate drugs. Partly as a result of their campaign in 2016, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency in the UK recommended that warning labels should be featured on all valproate-containing medicines. Family doctors must only prescribe the drug to women of childbearing age as a last option after explaining all the risks. But why has it taken 50 years to get the warning out? In the UK, the government regulates what information is provided to patients, and according to Emma and Janet, it knew about the dangers of the drug as far back as 1973. They discovered the evidence deep in the National Archives.
There we go. That statement similar to that proposed by ICI could be included on all relevant data sheets but not on packaging inserts. So there would be no danger of the patients themselves seeing it.
If they hadn't have made this decision?
Yeah.
You'd have been warned?
I'd have been warned, and probably the boys wouldn't have been harmed like they were.
The 20,000 affected?
Yeah.
There wouldn't be that today?
No.
In a statement, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency said,
"At the time, according to clinical practice, it was for the doctor to decide how much information a patient was given about their medicine. Since then, the need for patients to be fully informed about their medicine has been underpinned by legislation."
But the legislation is often proving ineffective. Over the last year, hundreds of babies around the world have been born with sodium valproate syndrome. Charities say many pharmacists and health centres are still issuing the drugs in generic packaging with no warnings.
I have a contact in Belgium, I have contact in Switzerland, in Italy, in Spain, because I live near Spain. In all Europe, they give these drugs without information in the leaflet.
The fact that women are still not being made fully aware of the risk is particularly alarming, because among the affected families there's growing fear that fetal valproate syndrome is actually being passed on through the genes from one generation to the next.
You fall down? Yeah?
3 generations of the same family. Here today in Liverpool are grandma, 2 grown-up daughters and their kids. Fetal valproate syndrome has dominated their lives.
It's because I took that medication. That's why my kids haven't got a normal life, and they struggle every single day of their life to fit in and do things. One of my kids have tried to, couldn't cope, and tried to hang themselves.
Sue took the drug Epilim throughout her pregnancies and later discovered that it had left all of her children with mental disabilities. Now, her daughters are worried that their children have inherited the syndrome too.
Certain things that they're doing, like the behaviour ways, the way they're speaking. I've got 2 children, both have got dyslexia. My daughter's got dyslexia and dyscalculus, and she's in special needs school. My little boy's 9. He's got dyspraxia, learning difficulties, a bowel condition, sensory issues, memory problems. I never took the tablet, but then when I sit down and think about it, well, I've got facts, so it could be. They could have facts.
So far, Tanya and Natalie have never had any evidence to back up their gut feelings, but we've uncovered new scientific findings which could prove them right.
With the BBC News app, our vertical videos are designed to work around your lifestyle. And now you can swipe your way through the news of the day. With video at your fingertips, you can stay up to date with the best news stories from around the world, as well as the latest breaking news and headlines you can trust, wherever you happen to be. Download now from selected app stores.
All right, take a
Hey,
breath.
that quiet, calm year we wanted, Christian, it's not going to happen, right?
Exactly that.
And there is already full-on drama in the White House.
Long time today, and there were all sorts of rumours circulating.
These links to Russia are what hangs over this presidency.
Jean-Claude Juncker saying today, don't believe that Brexit isn't going to happen. I don't think the UK is going to change its mind.
So interesting. A year of Trump gives us, of course, a lot to discuss.
Beyond 100 Days, helping you make sense of it all on BBC World News.
Whilst researching this film, we spoke to several families who suspect that sodium valproate is somehow not just harming their children, but their grandchildren too. Until now, those suspicions have not been deemed credible. But we've obtained the results of a major scientific project in South Korea, which actually supports the idea that the drug can harm successive generations. Chan Young-shing, a professor of pharmacology, is leading the research that uses pregnant mice injected with the compound. What does your research actually prove?
They're giving the indication or one of the evidence that this chemical could cause the autism spectrum disorder transgenerationally through degeneration. It can give us some kind of a clue that the same thing is happening to humans. So it's a kind of a warning signal.
The experiment indicates that sodium valproate can travel through DNA and afflict successive generations with mental health problems. The findings are already triggering concern amongst experts on fetal valproate syndrome. Dr. Rebecca Bromley is a leading neuroscientist, and she believes the need for more research in this area is urgent.
That was the first bit of evidence that we had in any species that potentially this can be carried on to the next generation. Before this paper came out, we just didn't know. We had no evidence that it was going to be something that was an issue, and we were still learning about the longer term effects on the individual who'd been exposed directly to the drug. This is something now that needs to be looked at as quickly as possible to give families some reassurance.
Really?
Today, Tanya and Natalie are heading to Liverpool's Walton Health Centre. They want to get their children assessed for fetal valproate syndrome.
I'd like you to try this next one for me, please.
Neuropsychologist Professor Gus Baker is the lead author of the most comprehensive research programme ever conducted into children born to mothers with epilepsy.
What I want to be looking at is how this young boy is developing.
Hello.
Hi.
The first one, can you draw me a house? Okay? I'll be trying to get an overall picture of how he's developing in relation to how, for example, his peers are developing.
And I've drawn some flowers and leaves and gate and a path.
So I know you can't give us a definitive diagnosis, but what are your thoughts after that assessment?
Well, obviously it's going to take me a little while to score up the test results, but when I've done that, I'll be looking at his strengths and weaknesses, and I'll be identifying them and trying to map them on to what we understand about sodium valproate and how it affects children. And then I'll probably be in a good position to provide a formulation of what I think has happened to him and what we might be able to do to ameliorate those difficulties that he's clearly having.
Even though it could be years before the full extent to which her grandchildren are affected is known, Sue believes the drug she first took nearly 4 decades ago has caused infinite damage to her family's lineage.
I do think my grandkids have been affected by it. I've had my worry with my kids growing up. I've got the worry again with my grandkids. How long is it going to go on for? It's not fair at all. It's not fair. It's so wrong. So many people's lives have been affected and ruined.
The transgenerational impact of fetal valproate syndrome could potentially remain with families for centuries, leading to demands around the world that Sanofi, the company who originally manufactured the drug, pay compensation to those affected.
What would justice look like to you and the other families?
Justice is to recognize they are guilty and recognize they must give money to that child to have a good life because now the treatment are very expensive for the family and they need money to pay that.
In France, Marine's charity is campaigning to hold the company to account. Her protests have helped force the French government to provide millions of euros of backing.
The government decided to create a special fund to help victims. There is a fund that is organizing all the expertise, appoint the doctors and pay the doctors, and who are going to say who will have to pay. If the firm does not pay, the French state will pay on behalf of the firm and then will bring a claim against the firm to get the money back.
In the UK, however, a long battle to get compensation has failed to receive any government backing. In fact, in 2010, a landmark court case by affected families had to be abandoned after legal aid was withdrawn.
In England, the victims are in a very, very bad situation. It is the responsibility of the government and the parliament to help the victims. And it's the victims first. That's what they did in France. And it's, for us, unbelievable that the English democracy does not work properly and does not help the people. The people must put pressure on their government for that.
It's a rallying call that charities in the UK are championing. Emma and Janet are at the forefront of the campaign.
We're here today for a meeting with the Minister to discuss the possibility of a care package for the children that have been affected by valproate.
The care package is more important because of the transgender link now. The fact that our grandchildren could be affected, you know, with neurodevelopment disorders, possible heart malformations, they need care and support.
For us, it is a government issue. The government have to take responsibility on that matter and make sure that these children are fully looked after. We're finding that as they get older, as a parent in particular, my two are a lot older now, they're in their 20s, and it's a worrying factor for me because I'm not always going to be here to take care of the kids, and, you know, to live an independent life is going to be really, really difficult for them.
Janet's two grown-up sons, both of whom suffer with the syndrome, are completely dependent and still live at home. Philip is more seriously affected.
I'm 25 now and symptoms are I can't concentrate for long. I've got when I go outside, my social interaction is zero, and I'm very apprehensive with going anywhere really.
Both of Janet's sons have suffered with neurological problems since birth, and 2 years ago, doctors discovered that Philip, like many maturing sufferers of fetal valproate syndrome, had developed yet another condition.
After I've finished my college course that I've been for 8 years, I was diagnosed with epilepsy, stress-related epilepsy, and it's really hard for me to. It's really hard to. Yeah, it's hard for me to describe the symptoms, but I know it's really, really difficult to live with.
I think it's disgusting the way the government are acting. I think they should pay compensation to all these babies that have grown up now to young adults that are struggling.
It goes...
Any kind of compensation, however, might come too late to help children like Bridget.
The coffin I've designed is important because it represents my Bridget, because it's a design of an angel and it's got her face on it. It breaks my heart. I've picked this plot because it's a lovely cemetery. I didn't want to choose a cemetery yet, but because of how my daughter's deteriorating so rapidly, I needed to do it because I won't be able to do it once she does pass away. Mothers shouldn't have to bury their daughter. No mother should do that. My family, we're mourning now and will be the day like I lose my little girl.
If you're concerned about any of the information you've seen in this film, please contact your family doctor urgently. Do not stop taking any medication prescribed by your doctor without speaking to them first.
Hello there, let's begin our weather roundup in North America. Big differences in temperatures here, very warm and quite moist air that's coming up from the Gulf of Mexico, producing that cloud. It's meeting really cold air that's coming down from Canada all the way across the plains, and that cloud has produced some more snow. That snow in the colder air is pushing its way across the Great Lakes again, and that'll head into eastern Canada. But to the south of that, where we've got the milder air, we've got that active weather front which is producing some heavy rain. There's been some flooding, for example, in Kentucky. Further west, it's generally dry. There'll be some sunshine around the Pacific Northwest, particularly south of the border of Canada and the US, seeing some more wet weather here. Now, moving down into Mexico, and very little rain, a few showers drifting down together with that rain that we've got across the Gulf of Mexico. Drier probably across Nicaragua. Just a few more showers beginning to arrive, though, across Hispaniola. Not as heavy as the showers, though, we're seeing in South America. Very wet weather, of course, recently in Bolivia. That extends its way towards the Andes, and more rain to come across southern parts of Brazil. By contrast, across Argentina, the River Plate should be generally dry and sunny. More rain and snow, though, to come across Europe. Some heavy snow for the Alps, northern parts of Italy, heading into the Balkans. Some more snow across Norway and Sweden. And in the cold air that we've still got across Iberia, some rain and some snow over the higher ground here. Heavy showers, though, continue around the Gulf of Guinea to Central Africa, all the way towards Madagascar and Mozambique. Some thunderstorms again for the Eastern Cape, the Western Cape, Cape Town. It looks like it's going to be dry and sunny, and those temperatures are continuing to rise, as they are across large parts of Saudi Arabia. Changes across the north of the Middle East. More cloud is coming in and a bit more of a breeze, bringing in some showers, some heavier downpours for northern parts of Iraq. Now, across South Asia, we've seen the cloud bubbling up again, a few thundery showers developing. They'll still be there across central parts of India on Monday. Quite unusual for this time of the year. Some wet, wintry weather heading across Afghanistan towards the Hindu Kush. And some more snow showers around the edge of an area of high pressure that's blocking things off across China. Some strong winds still, again, for the Korean Peninsula, across Japan, and we'll see some more snow here, especially across Honshu and Hokkaido. For most of China, it'll be dry underneath that high pressure. Some chilly winds, though, for Beijing and Shanghai. And thickening cloud, a developing tropical storm will bring some very heavy rain early in the week across the Philippines. Got the usual showers across Indonesia. Not many showers, though, across the far north of Australia. Drier than it has been, it has to be said. And most of Australia will actually be dry on Monday. The heat's beginning to develop and push its way more into the interior. So low 20s or so for Adelaide and also for Melbourne. Similar temperatures across New Zealand, where we've still got some rain around on Monday, especially for northern parts of the North Island. Goodbye.
Trust in what you know, not what you fear.
Catch all the latest news from the Winter Olympics. Go online for an interactive schedule
And personalise the BBC Sport app to track your favourite events and set real-time medal alerts. With up-to-the-minute reports and in-depth analysis on BBC World News, the BBC Sport website and the BBC Sport app.
This is BBC World News. I'm Tim Wilcox. The headlines. Britain threatens to cut funding to charities amid more claims that overseas Oxfam staff regularly used prostitutes. And as Korean leaders continue talks to improve relations, hundreds of anti-North Korea protesters hold a rally in Seoul. Hello and welcome to BBC World News. The British government says it will hold talks with the charity Oxfam on Monday after more allegations emerged about its staff working overseas. Several Oxfam employees either left or were sacked after claims they hired prostitutes in Haiti, and other claims regarding a programme in Chad are being investigated as well. Andy Moore reports.
After Haiti, now new allegations about the behaviour of some Oxfam workers in Chad in Central Africa. They date back to 2006 and also involve prostitutes. The head of mission in Chad at the time was the same man who resigned from Oxfam 5 years later because of the scandal in Haiti. Oxfam said it was shocked and dismayed about the latest revelations from Chad. It said it couldn't corroborate the information, but it highlighted unacceptable behaviour by a small number of people. The International Development Secretary, Penny Mordaunt, has now sent a strong warning to all UK charities receiving public money that those funds will be withdrawn unless they can prove they are cooperating fully with the authorities on safeguarding issues.
I'm very clear. We have got to, and the sector has to step up in terms of tackling what is an industry that is being targeted by